우리 곁에 다가선 인공지능 AI. 이제는 면접에서도 AI에게 판단을 맡기는 시대가 되었습니다. 언젠가는 AI가 인간을 지배하지 않을까요? 아니면 AI는 우리들과 친구가 될 수 있을까요?
Just a few years ago, people thought that creativity would be something out of reach of computers forever, that it would be something uniquely human. But we have to be careful because it will be fake. Machines becoming so intelligent, more intelligent than us, that they could take over humanity or something. So I think that's science fiction. I would say that choosing a field of research is like falling in love. Oh, it's a very powerful, positive emotion.
인공지능에 대한 모든 궁금증. AI 연구의 3대 석학으로 불리는 요슈아 벤지오 교수님께 직접 물어보았습니다. 교수님이 생각하는 AI는, 그의 대학생 시절은, 과학자로서 가장 짜릿한 순간은, 요슈아 벤지오 교수님이 20대에게 전하고 싶은 이야기, 지금 시작됩니다.
My name is Joshua Bengio and I'm a scientific director of Mila. And I love research.
Today's topic is AI.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So first of all, let me put a little bit of context because it's interesting that we now have machines that can be creative. Just a few years ago, people thought that creativity would be something out of reach of computers forever, that it would be something uniquely human. And in fact, about 5 years ago here, we discovered a particular kind of deep learning method called GAN, which has been extremely successful in creating images and other things like sounds. So now we have machines that can invent images, texts, sounds, but they're still not as good as humans at creativity because we understand the world much better. We have a broader understanding of the world, and when you create, it's always in reference to the world around you. Now, your question about who owns the work, I think at this point and in the foreseeable future, these machines are objects and they are tools that we have built to help us. So if you buy that tool and then you use it to create something, I think it should belong to you. Now, it becomes a commercial question between the say companies who have created the products and the users who are buying it. What kind of contract do they have? But certainly, I think it would be a mistake to think of the AI system as persons, because they don't have a social role. They're tools we're creating to help us. They're not people, and they shouldn't have that kind of status, according to me. Well, I don't think a lot of researchers are thinking about humor right now, because we are very far from building machines who would understand us and who would understand our world. But I think it will come. It's not clear when, but we are gradually building more capabilities into computers. It might take years, decades, centuries, because research is exploring the unknown. So let me say something else. Why I think it will happen, that we will have machines that can have humor. Our brain is a big machine. People have a hard time accepting that, but it's very complicated. It has a lot of randomness, but it's a machine, and it works according to the laws of physics and according to some principles that we're trying to discover. And as we make progress in understanding those principles, we can build machines that have the same kinds of capabilities. No, it's not possible. There's too much uncertainty. In fact, if somebody tells you, oh, we will have machines with such and such capabilities in this year, it is not credible. There's so much uncertainty about the future and when we will make progress. There are a lot of challenges, and it's impossible to say. Yeah, there are people who are exploring the use of AI in education. There are not enough educators around the world, and so AI could be a very useful tool to make education more personalized and more accessible. At the same time, I have to say that it's really important to keep human beings in education. Teachers are super important because there's a psychological aspect to learning for children. A child really needs to have an adult who's going to be like a role model, and there is something that is beyond the knowledge, which is an emotional relationship between the child and the teacher, and that will continue to be needed even if we have very smart machines. So yeah, I believe that AI can make a huge difference in the future for education, but we also need to continue training good teachers, and the result will be better education for more people. Yes, eventually, yeah. I think there is some work in that direction. Right now, people are trying to build systems that can recognize emotions from faces, from the voice, from gesture. These systems are, reasonable, but they are not perfect. And even for humans, emotions are sometimes hard to read. So that's one aspect. And then I think we're far from that, but people will be building systems that express emotion in order to be more friendly and so on, because humans like to communicate in a human-like way. But we have to be careful because it will be fake. Yes, for now and for the foreseeable future, these will be just faking emotions in order to make you feel good, right? Maybe later things will be different because there's also research to build actual emotions into machines, but this is very far in the future. This is already happening. I mean, the first speech recognition systems, they were trained only in English because this is where we had a lot of data. And now the companies that are doing these things, they have hundreds of languages. There are some challenges because you don't have enough data, but there have been so much improvement in the technology. They can share information across many languages. And so now I think we're going to see more and more specialized speech recognition systems that can work even for dialects. And that's good. It's going to make computers more accessible to more people. Right. So there are many concerns about AI, and some people who are concerned about what you're saying. So machines becoming so intelligent, more intelligent than us, they could take over humanity or something. So I think that's science fiction. What is more worrisome is that we could program those machines, because we're building them, right? They are tools we're building to help us. But when we build tools, we can make mistakes. There are researchers who are trying to build safer AI, right? So that, I think, is a reasonable thing to do. But the Terminator scenario is just doesn't make much sense. And although I don't have a crystal ball, I mean, based on the current AI and current science, that's we're talking about so far in the future that doesn't make much sense. Right. Good question. So first, the jobs that are in danger of not maybe disappearing, but changing a lot, because some of the roles, some of the skills might be done by computers, by automation, are jobs that don't require, or particular tasks that don't require a full understanding of the world, but something very specialized. Right? So when a doctor looks at medical images to find cancer cells, you don't need to understand the whole world. You just need to understand these kinds of data. And that's a job that machines can do, right? And so jobs which require, or tasks which require like broad understanding, like general culture, general understanding of humans, of society, of science, these jobs will not be replaced by machines in the foreseeable future. Now, in terms of course, there's going to be, in terms of new jobs, of course, there's going to be a lot of jobs in technology. I mean, that's obvious, and I don't need to tell you that, you knew. So engineering and computer science, I mean, for sure, there will be a big need for this. But also, maybe more subtle, there will be a big need for joint understanding, so jobs where you need to understand, say, a little bit about AI and also about a particular field of application. So if you are in tourism and you understand the issues in tourism, but you also understand what AI can do, this is a very important job. But it's true everywhere, right? So right now, for example, I work a lot with people in healthcare, and they need people who understand medical issues, and maybe in a very specialized medical field, and understand the AI tools, because we're going to be applying these things, right? So this is going to be true across society. There will be a need for people who are very good in their field, which is not AI, and also understand enough AI to work with engineers to deploy those systems, to make sure they're safe, they're not discriminatory, that they are used in the best ways, and that we are actually creating new products and services that are useful, and so on. So that's another interesting direction. And then finally, there are jobs that have nothing to do with AI, but AI will not replace, because take, for example, a nurse, right? So maybe in the future there will be some sort of robots in hospitals and so on that are going to help, but we'll still need nurses, we'll still need human beings, because the patient wants a human being in front of them. Same thing as I mentioned, a child learning in school, she wants a human teacher, because there's a psychological motivation aspect, right? And the patient wants to see somebody, a human, holding their hand, because it's reassuring, right? So there are cases like this where the relational aspect, for example, if you're in business and you're a leader, a manager, this is a human skill, right? I don't think we're going to replace that kind of job with a machine anytime soon. And in fact, those jobs that require that human skill will hopefully become more valuable, because it will be difficult to automate those jobs. And so those jobs will, be something that we want humans to do. So they will have value. Whereas the jobs that can be automated, their value will go down, because it will be cheaper to do it. I hope that helps. So I think the two positions are right.
Yeah.
But the devil is in the details, as usual. So it depends what kind of AI system. We can now design systems that have some sort of protection to avoid discrimination, for example. But there's no law that forces companies to put that in their system yet. So we have to be very careful when we design systems that are going to have a big influence on people's lives, like recruitment, or even worse, in the US, it's been used by the police or judges, probation. I think there's a real danger of using those tools in a way that's inappropriate, but if done right, it could be useful in many cases, as in recruitment. For example, it could help match people that are far away, that don't have time to do an interview. One thing that is important to remember, in addition to the discrimination issue, the fairness and so on, is that the current AI systems are stupid. Okay, they don't understand human psychology, they don't understand society. They're just matching clues in a statistical way. At least the current systems, that's what they do. And so the biggest mistake is to use those tools as if they were like human beings, as if they were very, very smart people, but they're not, right? So they could be useful, I think, to filter potential matches and things like that. But they clearly cannot have the judgment of a human being. They don't have a moral judgment. They don't understand emotions. They don't understand psychology, right? So I think there's a potential for very good use, but it has to be done carefully and in a way that's ethically correct. I think there are a lot of things that can be understood without going into the math, because you're not going to be programming them yourselves, right? So what you need to understand are things like what's the general process by which those systems are built, for example, by imitating humans and things like that. And you need to understand their limitations, because they're not perfect, they make mistakes, what kind of mistakes. And you need to understand their potential, what are the things they could be doing, so you can find, you can work with engineers, maybe in a smart city, in order to design better applications for tourism or anything else. Of course, economic development is important, but it shouldn't be the supreme value. Personally, we need to be happy more than rich. And then in our society, we need to take care of each other. We need to worry about the well-being of everyone. We need to worry about our democracy, because all of these things are fragile, and technology can even be used to hurt our social fabric and the well-being of people. So I like it when I see, for example, a lot of young entrepreneurs who are thinking about applications of AI which could really bring something positive into the world. So they don't do it just for the money. They do it because they want to feel good about their work. They want to feel motivated that their work is going to be useful for society. And I think that's very, very important and good for them, because we need to feel good about our work. Like our work is like most of our life. So it's really important that we do something in agreement with our values. You know, what's interesting about AI, it's a very generic tool, transversal, so it can be used in many niches, many areas. Today, I would say any business that relies on using images for something, AI can be very, very useful, like from cameras or any kind of visual information. And it doesn't have to be like red, green, blue. For example, people use satellite images, which have not just color, but all kind of spectral information, medical images, cameras in many places, in factories and so on. So that's one area where AI is very strong, and there are many possibilities where it could be used. But that's sort of the lowest hanging fruit, because it's where it's most advanced. Then there are lots of applications that have to do with language. I mean, as I said, current systems do not understand a lot, but they can do pretty amazing things. in being able to take as input documents rather than normal databases, right? So they can take unstructured data as input, images, texts, sounds, any kind of signals. So these kinds of signals happen in many sectors, in many industries. I don't know that there is one area that I would say, oh, this is where you have to go. In fact, I think it's much more important to develop the skills to use those tools and to talk to a lot of people who have potential use for this. And I think the people who are the entrepreneurs who are exploring this are in a better position to find good applications than people like me. Because I'm doing research, what I'm doing is very abstract and very general in a way, but at the same time, I don't spend time talking to, I don't know, people who are in business trying to solve a short-term problem. And so I think the people who are in the field are in the best position to figure out how AI can be good for them. But for that, they need to understand a little bit the technology. And that's why they need to study and collaborate with people who have some engineering expertise in AI. There's a lot of papers,
Yes.
that's true. But you know, if you do a random sampling, you will see what is trendy.
Okay.
But it's hard to read those papers initially because there's a lot of jargon and they refer to other papers and so on, so it can be difficult. So graduate students, they initially take classes to get the bases, and I wrote a book to help new students get into the field. Certainly. In fact, there's a lot of R&D going on to build this kinds of personal assistant.
R&D?
Research and development.
Okay.
A lot of companies are trying to build these kinds of AI helpers that help us find information, give advice, and so on. Usually it's going to be in a very specialized area because, as I said, we don't have systems that can understand very broad spectrum of our world. But there's a lot of progress. So I think we will see tools like this come up pretty soon. I mean, already you can use search engine and they do a pretty good job. It's not like talking to a tour guide, but you can find a lot of information using your brain and the search engine together. I think it's a case where the principle on which our society is built, free market capitalism, creates some kind of inefficiency because companies want to keep things to themselves, they want to keep things secret because they are in competition with each other. In reality, what would be, in principle, better is if everyone was collaborating and then we can share knowledge, we can share data. But we haven't found yet a good social organization that would have these things. So I think we need to explore, and young people need to think about how we can build a better society that has more sharing and more collaboration. But it's not easy and it's not obvious, but we have to keep trying. Our societies have been changing quite quickly over the last centuries, and so it will continue to change. What we consider now normal, in 50 years, might be considered weird. And a good example of the data sharing, maybe the most important place where we need to unlock the data is in healthcare. So clearly this is a common good, the data, the healthcare data, that if it was shared could save the lives of many people because the more data we have, the better treatment we can discover using machine learning. And so I think in cases like this, it's very obvious that governments need to step in. And sometimes it's governments which are not doing the right thing because they want to protect maybe privacy, but don't realize that there's another value which is important, and that is like we can save lives if we organize the data in a way that researchers and entrepreneurs can build services and products on top of it. So these are difficult questions, and we need more brains to think about them and try different solutions. So thanks for asking. First of all, when I was an adolescent, I was reading a lot of science fiction.
So do I.
And so I had some, dreams about AI. And then when I finished my undergrad and I started my master's, I was looking for, what topic I could work on. Mm-hmm. And I read a lot of papers. You should read a lot of papers. I read a lot of papers to try to explore, what would be interesting for me. And I read some papers about neural networks. And I realized that there was this field of investigation which was very new at the time, and very few people really cared. But there was this field that was interested in the question of intelligence in a general way, that if we made some progress in that field, we could both understand our own intelligence and animal intelligence and build intelligent machines. Mm-hmm. And the perspective that there would be such a sort of general understanding and what is intelligence, what are the principles of intelligence, that was really, really appealing to me. Mm-hmm. So I would say that choosing a field of research is like falling in love. Yeah, so we fall in love with ideas. Like we see some ideas and they appeal to us or they don't. And if we get excited about an idea, then we should pursue our, instinct, because research to be successful requires very strong motivation. You have to like your job, otherwise do something else. Yeah, because, research is exploration. So when you try something, it doesn't always work. You try some path, dead end, doesn't work. Try some path, doesn't seem to work. But as you do that, you're building a map of the territory. Mm-hmm. And you get an understanding, and now you can find a better path. Yeah, a lot of things. So, of course, I read all the Asimov novels with robots, right? And I was very impressed by the movie 2001 Space Odyssey. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful movie. I liked also the Arthur C. Clarke novels, and I guess when I was young I was a bit dreamy, and I think it's useful to be like this when you're doing research, because you have to be very creative and let things go and take chances and make mistakes.
Make mistakes.
Yes, very important to make mistakes. I was not very social. I was very bad at going to parties and so on. Not feeling very good about that. I was spending my time reading papers and books, and but yeah, in retrospect, I would have liked to be more social, but I didn't have the skills. Now, I'm older and I've learned to do a better job. I think it's really important to have a good balance between your work and your personal life and relationships. And we are in a society where it's difficult to find that balance. There's a lot of pressure to be very competitive, to work many hours, and at the end of the day, I don't think it's productive. So, for example, when you're doing research, in order to have good ideas and new insights, you need to take breaks. Yes, yeah. You need to be quiet. You need to have time to think. And if you're always like doing something with someone in a class or something, or reading emails or meetings or whatever, then it's difficult. You need some kind of space, like meditation or something, where you can be just quiet and let your brain settle. And that's the only way that very deep ideas can come to you, because in a very, very busy life, there is not much room for thinking. Oh, I don't know. I think every human being, if they are not inhibited by their education and their parents or their school or their friends, we're naturally passionate beings.
Naturally passionate.
But sometimes, people tell us, no, you're not good. Nah. And we lose some of that, which is unfortunate. I would say maybe the most difficult part was a period around from 1995 to 2010, so it's about 15 years, when my field that I had chosen had become out of fashion. So people were not interested in neural networks anymore. And so it was difficult to work in this area. My students didn't want to do it. When we wrote papers, they got rejected very often. So I was kind of stubborn, and so I continued. But I had to twist the arms of my students, and some of them decided to work on other things than the things I wanted. But I always kept sort of a strong vision that I felt, emotionally good about that direction, that it was the right thing to do. And it worked. What is the most rewarding in the life of a researcher is when you have the eureka moment, when you understand something that you did not understand before, and it's like, oh, it's a very powerful, positive emotion. It's very strong. It's like the pleasure of the senses, but it's intellectual. And that's why I continue doing research, because I keep learning and having kind of new insights, not just my ideas, but also other people's ideas I find beautiful, and they impress me, and oh, wow, this is cool. And I feel a very strong positive emotion when I understand things. So all along my career, this is what has driven me. But you can cultivate it. It's like, a good example is, think about people who have a lot of interest in very good food, right? So food can be pleasurable, but in order to really develop that experience, you need to spend time and efforts in order to do something really great about the food, right? It's an art, right? So similarly, if you seek the pleasure of discovery, of understanding, and you do it often, then you become good at it, and that's how you find really interesting new things. Recently, I've been thinking about how neurons in the brain might be learning in a way that's analogous to backpropagation. So backpropagation is a term for a very old method that we use to train neural networks. And for many decades, people have been wondering if the brain might be doing something like this. Many people think, oh no, it cannot do something like this. And I think it does, but not exactly the same. And so recently I've been having some insights about this, and I find it very exciting because I think my field of AI can play a useful role in helping neuroscience come up with theories about how the brain works and how the brain learns.